All right, it is now 7 o'clock, and all these things are working. So let's roll. So,
Perfect.
well, hello. This is Jim Morgan. We are with Fisher's Historical Society. We are a little small, but active group trying to save the history for the people in Fishers and what was going on here for before. Today we've got somebody I'm really excited about. Sage is an old soul, may not be in age wise, but she is definitely so in her hobbies and her activities and her actions. So, Sage, I will let you introduce yourself, okay? And we're going to kind of go into a topic of basically old school pharmacy, isn't it? Kind of what basic in that general rule. So
Yes,
Sage, I'll let you
sir.
introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi everybody. As you said, my name is Sage Tausi. I'm 16 years old. I am a junior at Hamilton Southeastern High School. So I live in Fishers. Although I have not necessarily grown up in Fishers, I am a true Hoosier. I was born in Valparaiso, Indiana, but I took a little detour with my family, and which we worked in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles for a little bit. But now we're back here in Indiana, and I am very blessed to be able to call myself a Hoosier. A little bit more just about me as a person. I am on our varsity cheer team for basketball. So I cheer on our basketball teams, and I obviously run my small business, which I'll get to a little bit more in a sec. And I also sit on a couple of different leadership teams in the community, at school, and I run a Turning Point chapter as well. So, going back to my small business, I want to start by telling you guys a little bit about how it started so you kind of get a little bit of the background of it. So, it actually started during COVID. I was told by my parents that I had to do something that wasn't playing video games or watching TV, which I couldn't necessarily do anyways because we don't have a television. Uh, but they said do something that's active, get your mind working because we don't want you to become this dumb, ignorant, tied to her iPad kid. And that's a great thing to tell a fifth grader, by the way. But living in
This
Los
started when you
Angeles,
were in fifth grade?
yes, sir. So,
Okay.
fifth grade, Los Angeles, COVID, perfect mixture to start something new, right? Um, but I started experimenting with like bath salts and sugar scrubs, and I was really enjoying kind of the more skincare side of things. And somewhere in there, we got gifted a book, a 1774 Toilette de Flora book, which is where all of my makeup recipes come from. I wish I had a copy with me, but I'm actually on the road, so I can't show you guys the physical book. But you can find it online. I have to say it's a little bit difficult to read sometimes because the historical S's look like F's and the F's look
Yeah.
like S's. So it's an
Yeah,
interesting
18th
read for
century English is
sure.
interesting to read.
Absolutely, but I highly encourage it. I think it's fun, and it gives you some great recipes to do homemade skincare. It will give you a pretty decent batch of stuff, but I absolutely loved it. I started getting more into the beauty skincare side of things, and I decided to call myself an apothecary on Facebook, where I started selling things. And we had a friend who lived a little bit northern of us. Um, she called herself the Mountain Witch. She had all of these old tea recipes that were all herbal remedies and said, if you're going to be an apothecary, you need to have true herbal remedies, 18th century recipes. And so gifted me a bunch of these recipes. And I went buck wild, absolutely loved it. Did all of the research behind it, found that they were accurate to 18th century. Some of them even to the 16th century, 1600s. Um, Absolutely loved that history. I've always been a history girl. I grew up going to this farm that specialized in 18th century living history. So my love story with America, with living history, American history, has just really grown since I was a kid. So from there, I got more into the herbal remedies, started making more teas, and started selling them on Facebook, going to local reenactments and saying, hey, can I set up a little 6 foot table and kind of share things, sell things? So I really got a firsthand experience of entrepreneurism mixed with that history. But my favorite part of that was always learning and telling the story, and that's stood true in every aspect of my life, whether it was politics, history, or my business. Um, So yeah, that's a little bit about me and the history behind the business. We're now obviously based out of Fishers. It's still a home run business. So this is year 5 or 6 now of running it. We're registered LLC. My gosh, I can't talk. I go to George Washington's Mount Vernon 3 to 4 times a year where I set up, teach, sell. Absolutely, absolutely blessed to be able to share everything that I've learned. Absolutely love it.
So you basically, a lot of the stuff you're doing is most of it is like colonial American time frame. Is that correct?
Yeah, so with my history, love of history, really focused in the American Revolution, Rev War era. So 18th century, 1700s, definitely my jam. Loved my US history class when we specialized in that area. Um,
Your teachers are
what was
probably intimidated by you.
a little bit sometimes. Most of the time, they like to have discussion and debates in class, though, which
Yeah.
I love. But being able to specialize in that allows me to do a different kind of medicine. A lot of times we hear apothecaries and we think of Victorian times with leeches and bloodletting and really, really gross things, if you ask me. You'll still get some of your tinctures and herbal remedies and salves. But as you get more later into history, we get more into the pharmaceuticals that we're used to seeing. You start to see Eli Lilly come around and things like that. But in the American Revolution era, 18th century, you're really focusing more on natural, living off the land, more focused on survival, um,
Well, we're
which I
watching, or
absolutely
we're also seeing a trend in
love.
people today becoming more interested in that kind of thing, going back and using the native plants and the herbals and the whatever
Yeah.
as a a present day thing.
Absolutely. That it's honestly been one of my favorite things to watch and grow. I definitely pay a huge amount of attention to the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, and really seeing people go more back to homesteading and what can we grow on our own property? How can we learn about the plants around us? And it really makes my heart happy. And I love to see, especially younger people getting involved in it because it really can change the trajectory of your life. It's, the difference between getting Botox and eating healthily. It's really amazing to see that people like Alex Clark have really been championing that movement, and I really love it. And I'm glad that I can be able to play a part in it to help teach people about the feverfew that's growing in their backyard or nettle. And it's not just something that is annoying, but it can actually help heal you. And things that are native to Indiana, native to the original 13 colonies, and say, like, there are things to learn. It's not just the natives that had this knowledge too, but the colonists as well. And a lot of times they were able to combine their knowledge. They knew a little bit more about what was growing in their backyards because they've been here a little bit longer. But that's not to say that the colonists didn't know things as well. And being able to combine that knowledge to make teas and to make medicine and get the amazing medical advancements that we can today. It's
Yeah, they
amazing.
made salves and they made poultices and they did all these
Oh,
different things.
yeah.
And I grew up on a farm, and so my wife and my kids think that I grew up in another century, actually. But it's but we did use things, and like if we had an animal that had a cut, and you didn't have we if we didn't have alum, which we used to was one of our first go-to things, but if we didn't
Yeah.
have that, we'd go grab a handful of cobwebs and pack it into there. So
Yeah.
so I did grow up where that was more common than what I think most people did, because we had livestock and livestock gets injured, and then you get injured and you find something quickly to fix it.
Really, yeah, I will say Indiana is kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on that, with so many rural families. Fishers, we're a little bit in between there, but Indiana in particular, we have a lot of people who have been and are going back to more of that homesteading, natural lifestyle. So
Well,
absolutely,
you bring up Fishers. That's one reason we have Fishers History Historical Society. Is
yes,
Fishers
sir,
has history, but very few people in Fishers know it. Okay,
absolutely.
because when I was a child, I was in Fishers as a child, and there were at that time 300 people living in Fishers, and 11 of them were my cousins.
Wow.
Okay.
Even I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was 300 people, and that wasn't that long ago. Okay, I mean, and then
Yeah.
as the growth track, the very first person we had on this show was Phil Cowie. He was the first paid fireman for Fishers. He's the one that took him from a volunteer department to a regular department. When he came here as fire chief, it was 1979, and there were 1,000 people in Fishers. 1979. By 1989, when he left, there were 11,000, and now there's what 150,000. So it basically tells you
Yeah.
that most people here have no roots here necessarily, which is why we're trying to bring this stuff out.
Absolutely. Yeah, as someone who loves history, I definitely love our local history. It's not, to me, as exciting as the American Revolution,
Oh
but there's
no,
definitely tons to learn. And I love that you guys are doing this and especially trying to get that outreach out to not just the community, but especially the younger community, because there is such a thirst for knowledge, for history. And I love to see people going back to it.
I mean, there's 17. I think it's 17 Revolutionary War heroes that are buried in Hamilton County.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so
Yeah.
so we do have roots. It's just not a lot of people were here at the time.
Yeah. And you can always find different routes. Like going back through your genealogy, I just did a paper for my history class where we had to talk about our genealogy and see where people came from. Most of my roots were from Indiana for a few years. Um, but even I had ancestors who fought in the American Revolution and then their kids moved out to Indiana. So they still had some of those Rev War relics.
Right.
And there's definitely, if you can think to look for it, you can definitely find the history. And this time of that we're in right now, America 250th birthday, just celebrating American history, that patriotism. It doesn't have to be just the Revolutionary War. You can look for any kind of history and just get more involved in the community and be proud of your town, your county, your state, and the country.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened between then and and now. So but yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let me go back to your apothecary. So you get into this, okay? So I understand. I think your mom told me that you guys have native flower gardens and native gardens and stuff there at your place. So tell me a little bit about that. What it's like to be to go from the ground up, so to speak.
So yeah, living in Los Angeles, we weren't in the best place to kind of grow a ton of things. Now we tried to grow some apartment right near LA was not the best, but being back in Indiana, we have, I think we're up to 4 or 5 garden beds now. We have one with all our pumpkin and squash and tomatoes and everything, but we definitely love to grow all of our herbs, and I'll use those in my teas as well as just around the house for our own salves, making mint water and stuff like that. Because even things like that that we think are just like, oh, they taste good, they're refreshing in the summer, they do have herbal properties and they are medicinal. When it comes to more native plants, we obviously have some native Indiana native plants as well as native heritage. So we grow a few things like yarrow and stuff like that as well.
I understand that you actually have some stuff out of George Washington's gardens from Mount Vernon. So
Yes, sir. So I am one of, I think, 2 or 3 people who have permission to pick things off of Mount Vernon grounds, which I am very happy to say and very blessed to say. One of my favorite products is my plantain salve. So a lot of times we hear plantain and we think of like the banana kind of thing. But there's actually a second kind of plantain plant that grows in the ground, and you'll actually see it in a lot of your front or backyards. If you walk outside right now and look in
right.
the grass, you'll probably find some. Um, but that leaf is so amazing. I call it like the magic salve or magic ointment. But it will help heal cuts, burns, bruises, bee stings, all of that kind of stuff. And that is one of the biggest things that I pick off of Mount Vernon grounds because there's just a plethora of it, and nobody on the grounds even knew about it, let alone knew what to do with it. They just thought it was another weed and they were trying to get rid of it, reseed it. And I was like, whoa, 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 can I like steal it? So I will pick stuff like that. I will also have things like juniper. and pine and more of kind of the what we consider Christmas herbs as well that I will pick off their grounds.
Well, very cool. So you go out there and you raise your stuff. Now, for those who are new to the concept of natives, okay, they're like the native perennials. Just so
Yeah,
you know, it takes 3 years before most of those things really start doing anything. There is a
yeah.
saying in native planting, which I'm also into native planting, but the saying of native planting is year one is the sleep year. So basically, all they're doing is putting down roots, and nothing up top looks like much. Year two is
Yeah.
the creep year because you're going to get some flowers, you're going to get some things, but really the year three is leap year, and that's when it's supposed to just spring to life. I am, by the way, my biggest native garden is going into year three, so I'm very, very excited to see what happens this year. So, but I've got 70 species in that one patch.
Oh my goodness, you'll have
Yeah,
to keep all of us updated on that.
yeah, so it should get interesting. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So now you guys, you come by a lot of this history, nerdy stuff on naturally because I know your mom. Okay,
A little bit.
yeah, and so in fact, she came to my house the other day and got a bunch of honey. I guess she's making mead over there. So
Yes, she is definitely big into her 18th century taverns and alcohol. Although I will say, in regards to history, we didn't necessarily do any living history reenactments, anything of that sort until my business. It
right,
was really when COVID happened and we found that local living history farm. Shout out to Riley's Farm in California, Oak Glen, one of my favorite places on earth. That because that definitely started my living history path and my love for history, as well as I think my parents. But otherwise, if it wasn't for the business, I don't know how much involved we would be in that community.
okay, well that's cool. So you're the one that lit the match.
A little bit, yeah. We've
Okay.
definitely all kind of found our different paths in it. Mom definitely loves the sewing and just she loves any history. But the sewing in the taverns definitely. I'm more of the games in the taverns and the obviously the herbal remedies.
Yeah, we met. Your mom and I met at one of our estate sale auctions, and she was buying some antique furniture, and that's how we got talking history and what have you. So yeah, so that's how we actually connected.
That checks. We definitely love our estate sales.
There you go. So tell me about you go out there and you start picking your plantain or whatever it is, and then what are you doing to how do you're going back and finding the recipes from the 18th century or the 1700s or whatever, and then creating it from
Yeah.
that. Was it a lot of trial and error finding the right?
Yes.
Mhm.
There was definitely a lot of trial and error. There's no easy way to follow an 18th century recipe exactly because a lot of the ingredients, especially when it comes to like more of the makeup and skincare side of things, we just don't have in our culture anymore. Things like crushed whalebone, where are you going to get that? And trying to find a substitute that's going to give you the same or similar medicinal property and or consistency, that is definitely more of a trial and error in the makeup and like skincare spices department than it is in the tea department. The teas and more herbal remedies on that side, teas, tinctures, salves, those are pretty easy to get accurate documentation of, with the exception of a few teas, just because, some of the lower class is not documenting as much of what they're drinking. Whereas the higher class, you're hearing about teas being dumped overboard at the Boston Tea Party, listing what teas were there and what ingredients are in those, because those are teas that you're seeing in the shops more regularly versus a Liberty tea, which changes depending on what county you're in. Um, so when it comes to the teas, it's a little bit easier. My recipes for that come from really all over the place. I try to get as many primary sources as possible because I really pride myself and my business on being as accurate to the 18th century as possible. There are some cases where I have to make my best educated guess, and I do kind of disclaim that of, these were all ingredients that we had in the 18th century, but we don't know if they would have combined them to make this exact tea, but we know it tastes good. So kind of things like that are
Right.
more common.
Well, it's like I just bought a New Jersey tea plant, which I'm
Okay.
excited about. Because they did use it for tea, and during the Revolution when they couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, there's lots of different documentations, and teas in the 18th century, you get kind of an interesting mix because you are seeing things with brick tea, you're seeing loose leaf tea, you're seeing a lot of different influx of ingredients because you're having colonists here who are like, we don't want to buy England's tea anymore. We're going to make our own teas using whatever's in our gardens. And sometimes that didn't turn out to be the best case scenario when you don't know what's in your gardens yet. Um, but you're getting that combined with tea coming in from China, and you're getting people like Ben Franklin whose favorite teas are from overseas, but now they're not wanting to support that. And okay, well, let me grab this hickory leaf and see what this tastes like. And okay, this gives me the spice that I like from this uh, Chinese tea. So let's see what else I can mix it with. And that's when you start to see more herbal teas come in, not just from the medicinal side, but the taste as well, because any black tea, green tea, anything like that, we're going to have to be importing more.
well, one of the things too, you've been doing your research and you've been studying this for years now. When you
Yeah.
start getting into the natives and you start getting into what you can do with them and what have you, you also need to be aware that you need to do some studying. You just don't go pulling stuff out of the weed pile and seeing what you can do with it, because some of them are going to have
Yes.
adverse effects. It's like I planted some elderberry bushes in my backyard, and in the process,
Yeah.
I found out that that's all well and good, but if you burn the elderberry sticks, if you make a bonfire out of it, you can get cyanide poisoning. So that's kind of a bit of a challenge.
Yes.
It's a nice thing to know before you do it.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of scenarios like that. Especially one of my favorite stories to tell is about the nettle leaf. So everyone hears nettle and we think of, oh, stinging nettle, stay away from it. But if you're able to take the stinging parts off of the leaves, which are hard to do, I'm not going to discount that. It's definitely challenging at times. Um, but if you're able to separate those parts, the nettle leaf itself is actually known as a cure-all in the 18th century. So it helps with arthritis, it helps with rheumatism, it helps with just kind of clearing your system out and giving you a nice, like healthy, like kind of a refresh button, if you'll ask me, to put it into modern terms. But something like that, so simple, is also yet so complicated if you don't know the history and you don't take the time to learn. Which is one of the things I try to emphasize on my website. On each bag of tea, there's the information about more of the medicinal side of things, because I don't want somebody to accidentally end up with an allergy or something happen where you get a stinging nettle and you're not aware of it, especially if you're going into your own garden. So, highly, highly encourage the research behind things.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn is what it comes down to, I guess. So
Absolutely.
mhm.
And I don't claim to be an expert. I've been doing this for 5, almost 6 years now. Absolutely love it. Still constantly learning stuff every single day. There's, I will never know everything, and I don't claim to know everything.
Well, very cool. So what kind of things would you tell people out there that are interested in trying to learn more, what to do, how to go about it, or
Honestly, just read as much as you can. I love to read, so that's pretty easy for me to say. But look at things online, look for primary sources, look at the Library of Congress. It's pretty easy to find the documentation for historic teas, for herbal remedies, stuff like that. You can pretty much go on any blog now and look up natural remedies and stuff. Take that with a grain of salt because it is a blog. But I'm always here for questions. I love to talk about this if we can't tell. There's always people that you can talk to learn more about the herbal side of things. When it comes to history, I highly encourage people to get active, get more involved in the community. The reenactment living history community is so big in Indiana, and it's so easy to get involved. We have a Feast of the Hunter's Moon. And we have a couple of other reenactments that you can go to. Well, not necessarily 18th century, especially being in America 250 right now, there are so many other events, opportunities that you can go to. There are events that my shop will be at that you guys can come see me at. Ask all the questions, go to all the events. If you have kids, have grandkids, take them to those events, get them to ask questions. My favorite thing about living history reenactments in general is you're having that hands-on experience. It's one thing to sit in a classroom and get taught from a book or get taught from a presentation or slides. It's a different thing to go in a museum and you're reading things, you're seeing articles of clothing. It's a completely different thing to go to reenactment, to be fully immersed in that world. You know, people are walking around you talking in a slightly different language. You're like, wait, what did you just say? Because we're not used to hearing that. You're seeing completely different clothing. You're like, wait, what is this? Aren't you hot in that? Well, no, actually, I'm very cool in this because this is linen and it's helping keep me cool. And kids don't understand that. Even a lot of adults don't understand that. Favorite story of being at a reenactment. It was freezing cold in December. It was like 2 days before Christmas. We had a fire outside of our tent. You know, stay warm, direct kind of the heat inside. The amount of people that went up to the fire, went up to my dad who was tending the fire and goes, "Is that real? Is that a real fire? Can I touch that? Is that hot?" People just don't understand what it is. And that was shocking to me. But to see kids and adults understand, no, that is a real fire. This is how they kept warm. This is what we're wearing. It is keeping us warm. This is the teas that we're drinking to help keep ourselves healthy with this frigid temperatures. And seeing people actually learn in the moment is my favorite thing. And I love to see people learn as well as just know that I'm also learning constantly. So,
Well, the best way to learn is to teach.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when this brings up an interesting point, and you 16, so you have a very different perspective than it's been a minute or two since I was 16. Um, what I have come to realize a lot of my own peers, and then a lot of people of different ages, there seems to be so many people seem to have in their world history is in their memory from the time we were young adults. Anything
Mhm.
beyond that doesn't exist, to them.
Right.
And it's such a challenge to get people to understand the fact that there were smart people and they were doing good things and smart things
Absolutely.
a long time before they were ever born.
Yes. Yes. That is absolutely. You're 100% right. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because, especially when we talk about more of the beauty and skincare side of things, everyone's like, oh, where's your white lead face paint? And I'm like, so actually, that's more of a French court thing. We're not doing that here in America. We're more focused on, I don't know, winning a war, trying to survive the winter. You know, we're not worried about necessarily how our face looks at that sense. And especially because we are starting to see the side effects of lead. Another big thing is the cleanliness. Everyone's like, oh, they were so dirty back then. Well, yes and no. It depends on who you ask. It depends where you are. But a lot of times, we're having that pomade and powder in our hair. So, pomade, for those of you who don't know, is a mix of pig fat and lamb tallow. Sounds disgusting. I know. Don't worry. I take the fat, we clean it for 3 weeks straight before we render it down into pomade so you don't smell like an animal. I understand it. And then the powder is all plant protein. So you're mixing animal protein with plant protein and we're protein. So when you put both of those in your hair, in my opinion, the way I describe it is like a Pantene commercial. It's the healthiest your hair will ever be. Nothing modern medicine can do can ever compare to that because it's just natural, it's original. There's nothing better than that. And
There's
a
not
lot of times
chemicals
those
doing weird things.
Exactly. And a lot of times the pomade and powder that we have, we're infusing herbs while we're cleaning it, or we're putting herbs in the powder that are natural bug repellents. Things like rosemary, things like mint, things like sage, eucalyptus, all of those we're starting to see now are natural bug deterrents. But when you're putting that in your hair, you're kind of keeping the bugs away naturally and you're not really thinking about it. Whereas today we have to think about, okay, I need to put on deodorant, I need to put on bug repellent, I need to put on bug spray, I need to like make sure I'm doing all of these things. Whereas in the 18th century, you're not thinking about it as much because it's just in your natural day in life. So a little bit about that.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's one of the challenges when you're trying to get people to embrace history, to understand. Like, personally, there's a lot of people out there that are talking about they would like to have a constitutional convention and rewrite things. I am absolutely 100% against that because I don't believe we have a single politician nearly as smart as the ones who wrote the first one. They're not nearly as well
Absolutely.
read. They're not nearly, because the other ones had studied for, centuries of writings before they came to the conclusion of how to do this. And
Absolutely.
they did not allow any press or anything out of there, so they couldn't grandstand, and I
Right.
just can't see us in today's society not having people going out and hitting, getting in front of a microphone.
Yeah, we definitely live in a very different environment now. The politicians are, like you said, they're not as well articulate or well read. When you have politicians that are getting out online, bashing other politicians for, in my opinion, not a good enough reason, when you could sit behind closed doors, have that conversation, come to that compromise, and then say, hey, we disagree on a lot of things, but we were able to come together on this, which is what you saw happening in the convention. Today, I would say a lot of that has to do with our educational system. And I can go on for this about hours. Talk to me on any other day about politics, and oh, I will go forever.
Yeah. Well, I was
I've
going to
done
say
enough of that at my school.
I will tell you that they were pretty nasty to each other back then too, so it was, but
Oh, absolutely.
that's why when they locked them in that room and Washington forbid them from saying a single solitary word, that's the only way it got done.
Absolutely. There
But
was a
then they
movie
hated
that
each other
just
the
came
rest of their
out.
lives,
Yeah. There's a movie that just came out called A Great Awakening. I highly encourage everybody to go see it. It is, I cried. I don't normally cry during movies, and I absolutely cried. But it talks about more of Ben Franklin's walk with faith. But in that, there's a lot of videos of what life was like in colonial America, especially in Philadelphia and Boston area. And it also showed little snippets of the convention when they were talking about what they wanted to include, what they didn't want to include, and kind of what more of that debate looks like from the journals of what we know. And it's not to say that those conversations didn't go outside of the convention because they did. People like Elizabeth Willing Powell and Martha Washington, Abigail Adams hosted parties for the men in the convention to come to have a place where they could talk about ideas, but still be in a more civil place where they can relax. They're drinking, they're eating, but they're having those discussions, and people's minds are getting changed because now you have a different perspective because now the women are involved as well. Just a small, like, smirk when somebody says something or a short quip when you're giving them a cookie can change the way that people think. And then when they go back to the convention the next day, more compromises are being able to happen. And I think it's just absolutely amazing. It's not something that you see a lot in politics today. Most politicians are my way or the highway. You're not getting very far. And it's like that in the education system too. It's
we'd have
more of
had to
our
have the same thing
society.
if we'd had TV cameras back then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the egos have always been big.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think
Mhm.
ultimately we as a society have come so far in some things, but also not very far in other things. And I think that's a testament in everything that you see. Going back to the medicine side of things, we've made some amazing advancements with being able to cure diseases, but we've also seen things where diseases were created because of our new ways of life. And if we had stuck with certain things from the American Revolution, it poses the question of would that disease have even come up in which we would have had to make that medical advancement? Not a scientist, absolutely not an expert, could not tell you, but it's just something interesting to think about in all areas of our life, whether it's medicine, politics, science, education, anything.
What was the one thing that, as you're doing this, digging through all your herbs and spices and whatever, what was the thing that probably surprised you the most?
Ooh, a lot of things surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. My favorite story to probably tell is about white willow bark and cinnamon. So I had heard of this tea before, white willow bark. I'd known that it had a little bit of medicinal property, but never really learned much about it. Cinnamon, I've always been aware of. We use it every day in our cooking, and I never really knew much about the medicinal side of things. I was extremely shocked when I started doing more of the research to see that colonists and natives actually worked together to kind of combine their knowledge, specifically on a tea like that. So white willow bark is an anti-inflammatory. So it's salicylic acid, which is what we still derive aspirin from today. So most of the aspirin pills that you're taking are going to be now manufactured versions of salicylic acid, but salicylic acid nonetheless. And the cinnamon is an added anti-inflammatory. Nobody in the 18th century necessarily understood the science behind why it worked. We found that out a couple years later about the salicylic acid, but we knew that the white willow bark and the cinnamon were both anti-inflammatories, and when you combined them, they actually did help to relieve headaches and what, among other things. So you start to see that come about as like an herbal tea in the 18th century, and I thought that was absolutely amazing. What shocked me even more is when I was doing a research paper for my language class, and I found out a couple years later in 1916, we get the first pill. And the first pill is actually aspirin, and it's a powder version of white willow bark and cinnamon turned into a pill that people can actually take. And then as medicine grows and advancements happen, we start to see that change into more manufactured versions of the salicylic acid, but it's still derived all from that natural medicine, which I think is absolutely amazing. I am not one for pills. You can ask anybody in my life. I cannot swallow a pill to save my life. So I love knowing that that tea that I'm drinking is still the same medicinal properties and it's doing the same thing as the aspirin pill, if not better, because it's natural and I actually know exactly what I'm putting into my body. So,
Rather than whatever
yeah.
chemical they decided to add to it.
Yeah, and nowadays you have aspirin, you have Tylenol, you have all these different things, and they're all still salicylic acid bases, but they have different chemicals in them that changes the base of them and changes the way that they react with your body, which is why some people have more aspirin than they take Tylenol because just one works better than the other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very cool. So that, I love how you're putting all that stuff together. And going back into these old things, these things you're finding. You've been to Mount Vernon many times, but
Yeah.
I've only been once. But one of the things that I was able to do is I got so excited about this when I found out that they had done it. They had found George Washington's original whiskey recipe, and a lot
Yes.
of his initial stills. He had, a lot of people don't know this, but he was the largest whiskey distiller in the country. At
Yeah.
that time, about 10,000 gallons a year, which is a lot of whiskey.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was able to buy a bottle of his rye whiskey, and it
Yeah.
just it's not convenient to do. You have to go to Mount Vernon to buy it, and
Yeah.
it's relatively expensive. But it was so cool to have, right? You know,
Absolutely. Okay, my question is, I'm 16, I can't drink. Did you taste it and did you enjoy it?
I tasted it. It was okay.
Okay.
Okay, but but to me, I had to have it. Okay,
Right.
because of the history and what it was. It's kind of like
Yeah.
there is a I got interested in something because the Midwest. What every time you read any kind of history about the Midwest, you hear about Applejack whiskey.
Yep.
Okay, and because it was used as money, it was used as a preservative product that you could store over winter and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was a very big economic situation for the Midwest. And I learned more about it. I found out that we'd all been told were told a rewritten story from the 1920s, um,
Yeah.
or 30s, because we all grew up knowing about Johnny Appleseed.
Yep.
And we were told that what happened is what do you call it? The temperance ladies did
Hmm.
not like his story. So they rewrote it. Okay, and so everyone grew up knowing the temperance lady's story of him. They wrote about
Yeah.
him being kind of a nut, running around throwing apple seeds everywhere with a tin can on his head or tin bucket thing on his head. He was actually, I found out, a land speculator, and he was going out ahead of the settlers, and he would find the best land near water. He'd plant apple trees on it, so there would be a economic and food resource that they could make Applejack whiskey. They'd have apples to eat, and then that ground was more valuable, so he would sell it to them for a big profit. Okay, so that's what he was doing. Which made me respect him a lot more than than the original story. He's buried
Yeah.
in Fort Wayne. I've been to his grave. I poured a bottle of Applejack whiskey on it, by the way. But anyway, but in that process, I'm like doing Googling. I'm going, I've never run into Applejack. Where is it? It's all through our history.
Yeah.
I found out that there is a distillery in New Jersey that still
Okay.
makes it. Same family. So it has
Wow.
been there. Laird, Laird apostrophe S, Laird's Applejack.
Okay.
You can find like in the brandy aisles when you get to be a few years older. Okay. But your mom would definitely go for this. Okay. But
Okay.
it's cheap. Okay. But there's been 9 generations of Lairds that have been distilling this since the 1600s. And one of them was a soldier fighting under Colonel Washington in the French and Indian War and
Wow.
brought some of his family's hooch to there. Washington liked
Mhm.
it and got a copy of the recipe and was making it himself. So I always have a bottle of that around just because of the story, you know. So yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to say I have never had George Washington's whiskey or any other 18th
You're
century
not supposed to
alcohol.
yet.
Yeah, I will say I've been around my mom plenty of times when she is making the mead. We have a good friend who makes cherry bounce, and so I've seen all of the different kinds of 18th century alcohol shrub turned into non-alcoholic and an alcoholic beverage. Um, Seeing all of that is very, very interesting to me, especially coming from the herbal side of things, because you get a lot of those herbs being used in alcohol. I can't say so much with whiskey, that's not really my forte. But I know with other things like dandelion mead, that dandelion has herbal and medicinal properties that we're using it in tea, as well as now we're using it to make a pretty decent tasting, so I'm told, um, drink. And seeing also that that alcohol that we're using is also being used to make tinctures. And that is the probably the fastest acting medicine that you can take in the 18th century. So just kind of seeing all of that overlap, or it really shows that our ancestors are smarter than we think that they are, and we really should be giving them more credit than we do.
Well, you know, when you start thinking about it, it's like uh, alchemists always get picked on because they wanted to make gold because they had this theory that if they could make gold, then all wars would end because everybody could have all they wanted, right? Okay, that was their theory.
Right.
And they believed that a good and just God would never have people that would have to fight for each other. And that's why they thought they'd be able to do this.
Yep.
Well, they always get blamed for for not succeeding. However, their experiments are what created pharmacy and what created so many different things. So
Yeah.
they made a lot more gold than they ever would have dreamed to have, by creating the science.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being with us. Where's your next adventure? I know you're
Of course.
doing one now.
Yeah, I am a junior in high school, so I'm currently on all of the college visits. Tomorrow is my last college visit before I kind of sit down and decide where I'm going. I'm looking at majoring in business and minoring in political science and US history, kind of the perfect combination if you have ever gotten to know me. Um, but in regards to other events that I'm happening soon, I will be at Mount Vernon's Rev War weekend, the first weekend of May. So if you ever get out to the Virginia area, come see me there. As well as 2 events in Indiana in June, June 12th through 13th. There is an event in Indianapolis called the Colonial Fair. I would love to see everybody there. It's a great hands-on experience. It's great if you have kids or grandkids who are homeschooled, but we really want to just see as many people there as possible. There's many different things to see, and I have it on really good authority that George Washington will be there, not just on stage speaking, but actually in the crowds getting to talk with you guys. Um, and I've heard that he loves to stand still for a short portrait. So you can get your picture taken, as well as the Masons Founding Fathers event festival, I guess, in June 19th and 20th in Franklin, in Indiana. So I know that's a little bit ways away from Fishers,
That's not too
but
far. A lot closer to
lots of
Virginia.
adventures.
Yeah, it's
It is
closer
a
than
lot closer
Virginia.
than Virginia.
Yeah,
A lot
exactly.
closer.
Well, thank you
But
so
yeah,
much for coming and sharing with us. I really appreciate it. And
of course.
I love seeing your enthusiasm and the fact that we need more young people that want to do history. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening.
have fun at your visit.
Thank you.
All righty, bye bye.
Bye.